Naftali Bennett, the Israeli prime minister, seems to be somewhat less hawkish on the Iran issue than Bibi Netanyahu used to. I've heard that privately he talks about Iranian nuclear weapons capabilities as opposed to breakout as being the true red line for the Israelis. Do you see a change in the Israeli position?
I don't necessarily think that the new Israeli administration is less hawkish, is not as proactive in fighting the deal, especially by direct interference in U.S. domestic politics in the same way that Prime Minister Netanyahu did, very brazen speech that he delivered at the joint session of Congress in 2015. Yep. That's not the case anymore. But Prime Minister Bennett can't afford to be seen on the left of former Prime Minister Netanyahu, now the leader of opposition. And so he has to come out in opposition to restoring the deal. But the reality is that, as we have seen now by statements and comments by a lot of former Israeli security and military officials who served in the Netanyahu administration, they all now agree that a no-deal scenario does not serve Israel's interest. And in fact, Trump's withdrawal from the agreement in 2018 was a strategic mistake that has basically brought Iran to the verge of nuclear weapons.
Which was not Netanyahu's position at the time that Trump decided to withdraw from it.
That's correct, and it's still not to this day. But again, those who don't have the political calculations of leaders like Prime Minister Netanyahu or Bennett admit that that was a mistake, and basically that the nuclear deal is better than all the other alternatives for Israel.
Another thing I'd love to ask, because we don't talk about it very often, your view on why the Israelis should have, say, 100 nuclear weapons, and yet it's unacceptable for the Iranians to have any. What's your view on that?
Well, international relations is about double standards, right? So the fact that Israel already has nuclear weapons doesn't mean that Iran, which is a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, should have the same rights. It's true that proliferation cascades have often been feared, but rarely have actually materialized. Take the case of North Korea. It did not result in a cascade of nuclear weapon proliferation in that part of the world. But in the case of Iran, it's a very different situation. We know that Turkey and Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they've all have looked into developing significant nuclear capabilities, not necessarily weapons, but again, it's a hedging policy that could render a region that is already in too much turmoil even more unstable. So again, it's a risk that I don't think anyone should take. And the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons, I don't think would provide Iran with any kind of blank check to pursue a similar policy.